Okay, we will make a start now. So welcome everyone to our GCSE Maths session. We are starting a new topic in today's lesson by looking at the midpoint and the gradient of a line. So over the last 5 weeks, the last 5 lessons that we've looked at trigonometry. So we started off with Pythagoras' theorem. We then moved on to SOHCAHTOA. Then we moved on to the sine rule and the cosine rule, and then we finished off by looking at 3D trigonometry. We're now going to move on to sort of graphs and lines, so y equals mx plus c, parallel and perpendicular lines, and all of that sort. And we're going to start off by looking at the midpoint and the gradient of a line. So we're going to start off midpoint of a line, then move on to gradient of a line, and through these topics, we're going to be looking at exam practice as well. Okay, if you have any questions at any point, let me know in the Q&A and I will answer them for you as soon as I can. If you have any questions which are unrelated to the topic, then you can let me know at the end. I will stay on for 5 minutes to answer any questions. And then you can answer questions as we are looking at the exam questions as well through the Q&A. Okay, so if we make a start now, so what does the midpoint of a line actually mean? Okay, well, put simply, the midpoint of a line is basically you have a line like that, and you will have a coordinate over here and a coordinate over here, and you will be asked to work out the midpoint. So the midpoint is literally the middle of the line. Okay, so if we have this whole line, this distance, the midpoint is literally halfway across the coordinates of the line, halfway across the line. Okay, so normally in an exam question, you will be given two coordinates. Okay, let's call this coordinate A over here and coordinate B. And you will be asked to work out the midpoint of the line, and you will use the coordinates to work out the midpoint. Okay, so the way that you would do this is you would work out the coordinates of the x, and then you would work out the coordinates of the y. Okay, so you would work out the midpoint of the x and the midpoint of the y. And there is a way that we do this, and we're going to look at some examples so you get the idea of how to work out the midpoint. Okay, but from the slide, what you should have understood is what the midpoint of a line actually is. The midpoint of a line is literally the middle coordinates of the line. If you have a line, you're literally finding half the line and what are the coordinates of that point in the line where it's the middle of the line. Okay, so we're going to have a look at 3 examples. Then I've got 3 examples for you to have a go at. So we've got this first one, we've got the coordinates 2, 4, and 6, 10. So whenever we have coordinates, we have it in this form. We have the x coordinate that goes first, and then we have the y coordinate. If we're working out the coordinates of 2, 4, and 6, 10, the midpoint of those coordinates, we know that if we were just to plot this on a graph, just like that, 2, 4 is going to be around here, and then 6, 10 is going to be around here. Okay, so this is our line, and we're going to work out the midpoint, which is the middle of this line. Okay, so that's just a visual look for you to get. To work out the midpoint of a line, you add together the two x coordinates and divide by 2, and you do the same with the y coordinates. So add the x, just a minute. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to add the x coordinates and divide by 2, and then you're going to add the y coordinates and divide by 2. So if you have a look at this one, 2, 4, 6, 10, we know that in this, the x coordinate is 2 and the y coordinate is 4, because the x coordinate always goes before the y coordinate. And in 6, 10, the x coordinate is 6 and the y coordinate is 10. So all we're going to do is we're going to add the x coordinates and then divide by 2. So we're going to do 2, add 6, because those are the two x coordinates, and we're going to divide by 2. Okay, 2 add 6 gives you 8, and 8 divided by 2 gives you 4. So the midpoint is going to have an x coordinate of 4, and then we're going to work out the midpoint of the y's. So the y is 4, and the y coordinate of the other coordinate is 10. So we're going to do 4 add 10, and then we're going to divide by 2. The reason why we're dividing by 2 is because there are two numbers. So 4 add 10 gives you 14. 14 divided by 2 gives you 7. Okay, so 4, 7 is our midpoint. So you add together the two x coordinates, and then you divide by 2 to get the midpoint, the x coordinate of the midpoint. And then you're going to add the y coordinates, 4 at 10, and then you're going to divide by 2. And that's going to give you the midpoint of the y coordinate. And then you combine that together. This is for x, this is for y, and then you get your midpoint, which is 4, 7. And if we have a visual look on this graph, we know that this coordinate over here is 2, 4. We know that this coordinate over here is 6, 10. And we know that the midpoint that we've just worked out is 4, 7. Okay, so that's roughly in the middle, as you can see, 4, 7. To get from 2 to 4, we go 2 across, and then 4 to 6, we go 2 across again. 4 to get to 7, we add 3. 7 to get to 10, we also add 3. So we know that this is going to be the midpoint, 4, 7. So the midpoint of this first example over here is 4, 7. Okay, so we've got a question in the Q&A. Is this going to be on a calculator paper or non-calculator paper? So this is normally on a non-calculator paper. The reason why is because graph questions normally tend to be on a non-calculator paper. And these numbers are simple. They're sort of whole numbers. They're nice, easy numbers to divide. You would normally find the equation of lines on a non-calculator paper rather than a calculator paper, because you can do them simply without a calculator. So the next example that we're going to look at, I've got some examples for you to have a go at as well when I go to the next slide, but I'm just going to give these three as some solid examples. If you guys have any questions, keep asking in the Q&A, and then I'm going to give you three examples to have a go at yourself. So we've got 1, 4 and 9, 12. So we know that the x coordinate is 1 and the y coordinate is 4. We know that the x coordinate is 9 and the y coordinate is 12. Okay, so because the x coordinates always come before the y coordinates. We're going to work out the midpoint of the x coordinate first. So we're going to add the two x coordinates, and then we're going to divide by 2. So the two x coordinates are 1 and 9. So we're going to do 1 add 9 divided by 2. And that's going to give us 1 and 9 gives us 10. 10 divided by 2 gives us 5. So the x coordinate over here is going to be 5. Now let's deal with the y coordinates. The two y coordinates are 4 and 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 4 add 12. We're going to add together the two y coordinates, and then we're going to divide by 2. So 4 add 12 gives you 16, and then 16 divided by 2 gives you 8. So that's the midpoint y coordinate. Okay, so we've got 5, 8 as our midpoint. Okay, now if you have negative numbers, it's the exact same. All you need to know is how to add negative numbers. So over here, our x coordinate is -3, and our y coordinate is 9. And our x coordinate over here is 7, and our y coordinate over here is -1. Okay, so all you're going to do, let's deal with the x's first. You're going to add together the two x coordinates, and then you're going to divide by 2. So we're going to do -3 add 7 divided by 2. Now -3 add 7 gives you 4. 4 divided by 2 gives you 2. So 2 is the x coordinate. So we're going to write down 2. Let's deal with the y coordinates. The y coordinate is 9 and -1. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 9 add -1 divided by 2. Now 9 add -1 is the same as 9 minus 1, which is 8. And then 8 divided by 2 gives you 4. Okay, so our midpoint of the y coordinate is 4. Okay, so we're just going to write down 4 here. So our midpoint of -3, 9, and 7 and -1 is going to be 2, 4. Okay, so that's how you calculate the midpoint when you're given two coordinates. Okay, you add together the two x values and you divide by 2. That will get you the mid x coordinate. You do the same with the y's. You add together the two y values and then you divide by 2 and that would get you the y coordinate of the midpoint. Okay, and then if you want to check your answer, you can visualize it. You can draw a graph and visualize whether it's in approximately in the center or not. But that should hopefully give you the midpoint between the two coordinates. Okay, so as I said, that was some examples that you could have noted down for revision, or if it's the first time you're seeing this topic. I've got some examples for you to have a go at. Okay, so we've got the first one over here. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute. Actually, I'll give you, depending on how everyone does, I'm going to give you 1 minute. Have a look at it. This question 9848 and type in your answer into the Q&A. Okay, just 30 more seconds and then I'll go through it. Okay, I'm going to go through it now. So 9, 8, and 4, 8, to work out the midpoint of these two coordinates, all you have to do is you've got your x, you've got your y, you've got your x, and you've got your y. You're going to add together the two x coordinates. Okay, so you're going to add 9 at 4, and then you're going to divide by 2. 9 at 4 gives you 13. 13 divided by 2 gives you 6.5. Okay, so that's your x midpoint. So you've got 6.5, and then you've got 8 and 8. Okay, you don't really need to do this, but 8 add 8 divided by 2. 8 add 8 gives you 16. 16 divided by 2 gives you 8, so that's your y coordinate. So 6.5, 8 is your y, midpoint of your y coordinate. Okay, and I saw a lot of correct answers in the Q&A, so well done. Next question. Okay, again, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute, and then type in your answer into the Q&A. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers. I'm seeing a lot of answers in the Q&A. Okay, so we've got -10, -6, and -2, 8. So this is the x coordinate, and this is the y coordinate. This is the x coordinate, and this is the y coordinate. Okay, so to work out the midpoint, we're going to add the x coordinates and divide by 2. So we're going to do -10, add -2, divided by 2. -10 add -2 is the same as -10 minus 2. So that's going to give you -12. And then -12 divided by 2 is going to give you -6. So your x midpoint is going to be -6. So we're going to have -6. And then your y, if we add together the y ones, -6 add 8 divided by 2. -6 add 8 is going to give you 2. And then 2 divided by 2 is going to give you 1. Okay, and that's your y coordinate. So it's going to be -6, 1. Okay, so well done. I saw a lot of correct answers in the Q&A. Final question on working out the midpoint. Okay, again, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute, and then I will go through it with you. Okay, guys, there are some people that can't see the Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll share again in just a minute. Okay, I'm still here. I'm just going to share my screen in a minute. Okay. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. For those that don't have access to the Q&A, if you can scan this QR code using a phone, you should get a link to a form, and you will be able to type in your answers into the Microsoft form from your phone. If you don't have access to the Q&A. If you have access to the Q&A, carry on using the Q&A. But if you don't have access to the Q&A for some reason, you can type in your answers into the form, and I can see them on my other screen. Okay. Um, okay, so I'm going to go through these answers now. I'm seeing a lot of good answers in the forms as well. So well done, everyone. Okay, so we've got 0, 5, minus 11, and minus 10. Okay, so this is your x, this is your y, this is your x, and this is your y. Okay, so we're going to work out the midpoint of the x. Okay, so we're going to do 0, add minus 11, divided by 2. And then 0 add minus 11 is the same as 0 minus 11, which means it's minus 11. And then we're going to divide by 2. Minus 11 divided by 2 is going to give you an answer of minus 5.5, and that's your x. Okay, let's do the same for the y. So we know our x is going to be minus 5.5. Our y is going to be 5 plus minus 10 divided by 2. 5 minus 10, plus and minus together makes a negative. 5 minus 10 gives you minus 5. And then minus 5 divided by 2 gives you minus 2.5. Okay, so it's going to be minus 2.5, and that's going to be our y. So our y over here is going to be minus 2.5, which I can see. So well done, everyone. Even on the forms, I can see a lot of correct answers. So well done. So we've got minus 2.5. So that was midpoint. So hopefully all of you feel confident with working out the midpoint of a line. We're now going to move on to a different style of question. It's still on midpoint. We're going to end off with gradient, but we could also be given questions like this. You might be given the midpoint and you might be asked to work out the other coordinate. Okay, so over here we've got P over here, and it has a coordinate of 1, 1. And then we've got the midpoint, which is 5, 6. Okay, and then we need to work out the coordinates of Q. Okay, Q is over here. We need to work out the coordinates of Q. And the way that you do this is you compare the x coordinates and then you compare the y coordinates. Okay, so again, I'm going to go through these two examples with you, and then I'm going to give you one to have a go at by yourself. So if you look at the x coordinates, we're starting off with 1, as you can see over here. So we're starting off with 1. When we get to the midpoint, we're moving across to 5. Okay, so 1 goes to 5. If 1 goes to 5, we're adding 4, right? So on the x coordinates, we're adding 4. To get from P to M, we're adding 4. And because um, we're going from M to Q, we know that M is the midpoint. So from P to M, we're adding 4 to the x coordinates. So that means from M to Q, we must also add 4. We must do the same each time. Okay. So that means the x coordinate of Q is going to be 5 add 4. It's going to be 9. Okay, and same for the y coordinates. We're at 1 over here. To get to the midpoint, we have to add 5 because 1 add 5 gives you 6. Okay, that means to get to Q, we also have to add 5. Okay, the same as we've done over here. To get to 6, we've added 5. We have to do the same to get from M to Q. We need to add 5. So 6 add 5 will get you 11. Okay, so we've had a question. For the last question, I got minus 5.5 for 0 add 11. And if you add 11 add 0, it will be 11. Okay, so for the last question over here, it was minus 11. It wasn't 11. 0 add minus 11 will become 0 minus 11. Okay, it's a negative. Whenever you have a positive and negative together, you will have, it will be overall negative. Yeah, so this is kind of like a number sequence. Basically, you're looking at the x coordinates, you're comparing them, and then you're adding the same value to get the n coordinate. Okay? So the answers to the questions over here, 6.58 minus 6, 1, and minus 5.5 minus 2.5. Okay? And the answer to this is 9, 11. So if you have a look at this one over here, we're going from P to Q. In order to go from P to Q, we've got the x coordinate here and the y coordinate over here. We've got the x coordinate over here and we've got the y coordinate over here. We first of all need to compare the x coordinate. Okay, so the x coordinate is going from 2 to 4.5. So what are we doing to the x coordinate? We're going from 2 to 4.5. Because we're going from 2 to 4.5, we can see that we're adding 2.5. So that means to get to the x coordinate of Q, we also have to do the same thing. We have to add 2.5 to this 4.5 that we have. Okay, because 2 to get to 4.5, we need to add 2.5. So then 4.5, we need to add 2.5 to get to the coordinates of Q because M is the midpoint. That means the distance between the x and the y coordinates is the exact same. So we're going to add 2.5 to 4.5, and that's going to give us 7. Okay, and if we compare the y coordinates, we have 20 over here, and then we've got 13 over here. Okay, so 20 to get to 13, we've subtracted 7. So that means to get to the y coordinate of Q, we also have to do the same thing. We have to subtract 7. Okay, so we're going to subtract 7 from 13, and that's going to give us 6. Okay, so the coordinates of Q is 7, 6. Okay, so those were two examples. If you have any questions, let me know in the Q&A, but I'm going to give you guys one example to have a go at yourself. So just remember, you're comparing the x coordinates, and what you do to get from the x coordinate to the midpoint x coordinate, you do the same to get from the midpoint coordinate to the q coordinate. So over here in the first example, 1 to get to 5, comparing the x coordinates, we have to add 4. 1 to get to 5, add 4. So to get from M to Q, you also have to add 4. Okay, so 5 add 4 gives you 9. Okay, so the y coordinates, we've got 1. To get to 6, we added 5. So 6 to get to the y coordinate of Q, we also have to add 5. Okay, so here's an example for you guys to have a go at. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute, and I want you to type your answer into the Q&A or into the... Okay, well, before you guys have a go at that, I will explain it again, because someone's asked to explain it again, which is fine. So I will explain this question again. Okay, so we had the P coordinate over here. We had the P coordinate, which was at 1, 1. Okay, now to get the midpoint means that it's the exact middle of the line. We need to get from P to Q. The midpoint is 5, 6. Okay, so to get from 1 We firstly label them x, y, x, y, because the first coordinate is going to be x and the second coordinate is going to be y. The x coordinate of P is 1, as you can see, and the x coordinate of M is 5. Okay, 1 to get to 5, we have to add 4. Okay, we have to add 4 to get from 1 to 5. So then to get to the coordinates of Q, we have to get from M to Q. To get from M, which has an x coordinate of 5, we need to also do the same. We need to add 4. Okay, because we added 4 to get from 1 to 5, we need to add 4 again to get from 5 to the coordinates of Q, and that gives us 9. That's why we have an x coordinate of 9. For the y coordinates, we had 1 over here. To get to the y coordinate of M, we needed to get to 6. So 1 to get to 6, we have to add 5. 1 add 5 gives you 6. Okay, so to get from M to Q, you also need to do the same thing. So you will need to add 5 to 6 to get you the y coordinate of Q, and that gives you 11. That's why we had 9, 11 as our final coordinates. Okay, it's literally you compare the two x coordinates, how to get from one x coordinate to the other x coordinate, and then you do the same thing to get to the Q coordinates. Okay, now you guys can have a go at this one. And if you don't understand it, don't worry, just say I don't understand or something in the Q&A, and I will go through this one as well. I'll give you guys 1 minute. Type your answers into the either the form or the Q&A, and I will have a look at them. I'll go through the answers in 1 minute. Okay, just 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to go through the answers. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the answers now. So I've seen a lot of answers come in through both the form and the Q&A. So if we have a look at this, we've got the x coordinate and we've got the y coordinate. We've got the x coordinate and we've got the y coordinate, as you can see. Now we need to work out the coordinates of this Q over here. Okay, so we're going to compare the x coordinates. So if we look at P and M, how do we get from P to M if we compare the x coordinates? So we're going from 13 to 8. So if we look at the x coordinates first, we are going from 13 to 8. Okay, so we are going 13 to 8. Now, in order to get from 13 to 8, what are we doing? We are subtracting 5. Okay, so that means to get to the x coordinate of Q, we are also going to subtract 5. We're also going to do the same thing, and we're going to subtract 5. Okay, so 8 subtract 5 will give you 3. Okay, so the x coordinate is going to be 3. Now, if we have a look at the y coordinates, okay, we've got 9 over here, and we've got 7. Okay, so we're going from 9 to 7. How do we get from 9 to 7? To get from 9 to 7, we have to subtract 2. Okay, so that means to get to the y coordinate of q, you also have to do the same thing. You have to subtract 2. Okay, and 7 subtract 2 will give you 5. So the y coordinate of q is going to be 5. Okay, so you're going to have 3, 5 as your final answer. Okay, I think I saw an answer that said 1811 in the Q&A. The only reason that you got 1811 was instead of subtracting, you added instead. When we're working out questions like these, always go from one point of the line, so the end point, one end of the line to the other end of the line. Don't go from the midpoint to P and then Q. Go from one end of the line to the other end of the line. So go from P all the way to Q. Okay, and then to get to Q, you have to go through M first. So work out P to M. So we're going from 13 to 8, and then you can work out Q. And once you've got your coordinates, check your answer. We've got coordinates as 3 and 5. Does this seem reasonable for this question? Yes, it does, because 8 is over here, 3 is below 8, so the x coordinate looks fine. And we've got 9 there, 7 there, so we know that the y coordinate has to be less than 7. Okay, because this crossover here is at its lowest point compared to M and P. Okay, if that doesn't make sense, please let me know, either in the form or the Q&A. And if we have time at the end, I will go through it again with you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to working out the gradient of a line. Okay, so the gradient so we're going on to the gradient of the line now. Okay, so yeah, you've not missed anything. We're going on to the gradient now. So the gradient of a line is basically the steepness of the line. That's what the gradient means. Okay, so if you had a graph like this, we have a graph like this, you could have a line which goes like this. Now, the steepness of this line will tell us the gradient. Okay, so the gradient of this line, let's say that this line had a gradient of 2. That means the steepness of this line is 2. Okay, if we had a really steep gradient like that, if we had a really sort of nearly straight line, and we said that this gradient would be much higher, this gradient might be 10. Okay, so the gradient of a line just means the steepness of that line. Okay, the steeper the line, the greater the gradient. Okay, and if the line is going downwards, you will have a negative gradient. Okay, so normally let's say we had a graph like this, you could have a line going like this. This is a positive gradient. You could have a line which goes like this, and this would get you a negative gradient because the line is going downwards. Because the line is going downwards, you will have a negative number for your gradient. Okay, so that's what the gradient of a line means. Okay, because we're going to be building on this in our next lesson. Next lesson, we're going to be looking at y equals mx plus c, and then we're going to move on to the hardest of these lines, which is perpendicular and parallel lines. Okay, so it's really important that you guys understand what the gradient means. So how would you tell the line is going up and down? Okay, so if you literally look from the axis, this line is going down. You're looking from left to right. Okay, if the line is pointing downwards, then it's a negative gradient. If the line is pointing upwards, then it's a positive gradient. Okay, and we'll look at how to calculate gradient in a minute. Okay, so the gradient is just the steepness of a line, how steep the line is. You might see a graph with a line on it and be asked to work out the gradient. That just means the steepness of the line. Is it a shallow line? Is it just a gentle slope? Or is it a really steep slope? And that's the gradient of the line. Okay, and if we have a look at some questions, this will make more sense of working out the gradient of a line. So I'm going to go through this as an example first, and then we've got some questions that you guys can have a go at. So normally what you will be asked to do is work out the gradient of a line that passes through 2, 1 and 5, 10. So the gradient of a line just means the steepness of the line. Okay, and we're going to solve this in the exact same way that we worked out the midpoints. Okay, there's literally a simple technique that you can use to work out the gradient. Okay, and to work out the gradient, all you have to do is use this formula. Change in y divided by change in x. That's the formula you would use to work out the gradient. The change in y divided by the change in x. And the change in, you sometimes see it using a triangle. Okay, you could also see this change in y divided by change in x. But don't worry about this. This triangle just means change in. Okay, it's just a fancy way of saying change in. Okay, so if we have a look at these two coordinates, we have 2, 1, and we have 5, 10. These are our two coordinates. Step 1, we're going to label which one is x and which one is y. So this is our first coordinate. We'll say this is our first coordinate and this is our second coordinate. So all we're going to do is we're going to label this one as x1 and y1 because it's our first coordinate. We're just going to label it like that. And for number 2, we're just going to label this as x2 and y2 because this is our second coordinate. Okay, so we've just labeled the x and the y coordinate, and we've just put a little number next to it to tell us which coordinate it is. Okay, so we're saying that this is number 1 and this is number 2. That's why the x coordinate is going to be x1 and the y coordinate is going to be y1. And for number 2, the x coordinate is going to be x2 and the y coordinate is going to be y2. Now, all you're going to do now is the following. You're going to get the y coordinates, subtract it, and you're going to divide it by the x coordinates subtracted. So all you're going to do is going to take y2, subtract y1, and we're going to divide it by x2, subtract x1. And the reason why we have done that, we are trying to find the difference between the two y coordinates and the two x coordinates. Okay, so you take the y coordinates, you take y2 and subtract y1, and you take x2 and you subtract x1. And the reason why we're dividing them is because our formula to work out gradient is change in y divided by change in x. Okay, so y2 is 10, y1 is 1, so we're going to do 10 subtract 1, and then we're going to divide it by x2, which is 5, and x1, which is 2. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so 10 subtract 1 gives you 9. 5 subtract 2 gives you 3. So we're going to do 9 divided by 3, and that's just going to give us 3. Okay, so that's our gradient. Does it always have to be y over x, or does it not matter which way you put it? So it always has to be y over x. When you're working out the gradient, it always has to be change in y divided by change in x. Okay, the y always goes at the top and the x goes at the bottom. Okay, so your gradient over here is going to be 3. Now, do we have another example? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through this example once again for those of you who don't quite understand. Um, so all you're doing when you're working out the gradient means the steepness of the line. Because the gradient means the steepness of the line, to work it out, you're going to do the change in y divided by the change in x. So you're going to write out your two coordinates. So we had 2, 1 and 5, 10. We're going to label the coordinates x, y, x, y. So first of all, we're going to label them the first coordinate as 1 and the second coordinate as 2. And then we're going to label each of the numbers, whether it's an x coordinate or the y coordinate. So for the first coordinate that we have, we labeled the first one as 2, 1. We're just going to label it the x coordinate as x1 and the y coordinate as y1. For the second one, we're going to label the x coordinate as x2 and the y coordinate as y2. And then all we're going to do is we're going to do the second coordinate subtract the first coordinate. Okay, so the y value of the second coordinate, y2 subtract y1 divided by x2 subtract x1. Okay, and then that will get you your gradient. Okay, so a question for you guys to have a go at. If you don't understand, just let me know. I will go through this one after I've given you guys an opportunity to have a go at it. I'm going to give you guys a minute or so to have a go at this. Type your answer in the Q&A once you're done, and then I will go through the answers. If you're struggling, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to go through with you. So do you always have to subtract the coordinates before dividing them? Yes, you always have to subtract the coordinates before you divide them. Okay, I'm seeing a mixture of answers here. I'm just going to give it 10 more seconds and then I'll go through it. Okay, I'm going to go through it with you now. I'm seeing a range of different answers. Okay, so if we have a look at this, we've got two coordinates. We've got 5, 4, and we've got 7, 0. These are our two coordinates. We're going to label one coordinate 1 and 2. Okay, so we're going to label this one as 1 and we're going to label this one as 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 subtract 1. Okay, we're going to label each of the coordinates with the x and the y. Okay, so this is our first coordinate, so we're going to label this as x1, y1. Okay, this is our second coordinate, so we're going to label this as x2, y2. And then our formula to work out gradient is change in y divided by the change in x. That's our formula. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do 2 subtract 1. Okay, so we're going to do y2 subtract y1 divided by x2 subtract x1. If you want to note this down, you can note this down because if this is the first time you're doing this, this might be helpful. Okay, so y2 is 0. Subtract y1, which is 4. Okay, so y2 was 0, y1 is 4. 0 subtract 4. And then we're going to divide it by x2, which is 7, as you can see. And then we're going to subtract it from x1, which is 5. So 7 subtract 5. Now 0 subtract 4 will get you negative 4. 7 subtract 5 will get you 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 will get you negative 2. Okay, so that should have been your gradient for this question. Okay, there were a range of answers in the Q&A, but hopefully this makes sense now. To finish off, I also have another question for you guys to have a look at just to practice this understanding of finding the gradient. Okay, so another question, we will end on this question for today's lesson. So again, have a go at this question. If you have any questions, let me know. But have a go at it, I'll go through it in 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. So we've got a range of answers here, between 2.5. And there is a reason why you might have got 2, and there is a reason why you might have got a half. But the correct answer to this was a half. And if you've got 2, the reason why you've got 2 is because you've done your subtracting a bit wrong. Because it's a negative number. But we'll go through it now. So we've got 2 coordinates. We've got -3, 4, and we have 5, 8. Those are our 2 coordinates. We're going to label them. Let's call this 1 and let's call this 2. And we're going to do 2 subtract 1. That's what we're going to do. Okay, now let's label this x1 and y1. This one is x2 and this one is y2. okay, because the first one is the first coordinate, second one is the second coordinate. Okay, and then we're going to use our formula y2 subtract y1 divided by x2 subtract x1. Okay, so y2, as you can see, is 8 over here. So we're going to do 8, and then we're going to subtract y1. y1 is 4. Okay, so we're going to do 8 subtract 4, which you probably all got. Then we're going to divide this by x2 subtract x1. x2 is 5, as you can see, and x1 is minus 3. Okay, now x1 is a negative number. Okay, so if we think about it, we have this negative is going to stay there anyway. No matter if the number is negative in the coordinates, it doesn't really matter. We're going to have that negative anyway. Okay, and we're going to subtract this coordinate, which is negative 3. So we're going to subtract negative 3. That's what we're going to have. Okay, now 8 subtract 4 will give you 4. 5 subtract negative 3, that's not going to give you 2. If you got that as 2, then you would have got your gradient as 2. 5 subtract negative 3, when you have two negatives next to each other, that's going to make a positive. So 5 add 3, so subtract negative 3 is going to become 5 add 3. And 5 add 3 will give you 8. And 4/8 can be simplified to a half. Okay, so you should have got your gradient as 0.5 or a half.